I never spend a day or regret comparing myself to someone else. I never do that. I never compare myself in the way, for example, oh, I'm prettier than her, or I'm doing better than her at work, or to other social entrepreneur, or to like another supermodel, or to another mother. I don't compare myself. I compare myself within myself. So this is how I think, and this is how I see. And like, even in the whole 1 week, like I don't ever put a day for me to break. And if I were to have a day without any purpose or without anything, I can't comprehend. So I'm that kind of person. So in a way, people would see that I'm very hard to myself, which is true, but that is actually my inner strength, I think.
Hello everyone, my name is Lianhlawng and welcome to the podcast Lifeline. In this podcast, I will interview people who are having a positive impact in their community and have a strong message that deserves to be shared. We will dive deeper into their journey becoming a change maker, and hopefully you can take away some insights for your own journey. And please do subscribe to Lifeline on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or any platform that you are using. And also you can share this episode with your friends if you like it. It's really what helps me the most. In today's episode, you will meet Alinery, a super inspiring social entrepreneur and youth leader from the tribal community of Mizoram in India. She founded Rochun Pay It Forward, which aims to empower youth from grassroots India through education to realize their full potential. To date, she has built 11 libraries, mentored hundreds of young people, implemented digital literacy programs, and brought many international opportunities to her home state. She shares with us her childhood, during which she questioned everything, how she excelled at school and got a life-changing scholarship to study in Bangladesh, and why she eventually took the path of social entrepreneurship. It was such a great pleasure to discuss with Alinery. Her journey is really amazing and humbling. So have a great episode and see you in 1 hour and 45 minutes. Hello, Alinery. Super nice to see you and to have you on Lifeline today. So I always start by reminding a bit how I know all the guests I'm inviting. So for you, it's very special actually, because we've never met in person. And we've only met through panel discussions because I was moderating 2 panels, one for APYE and one for the Asia Pacific Social Innovation Summit by Impact Hub Taipei. And yeah, you were one of the panelists. And I think one thing I want to say now that I remember is while you were speaking, so many people went crazy on the chat and they were like, oh, Alinery is so inspiring. Oh my God. And yeah, I even remember some of my colleagues, they sent me messages after the panel and they were like, whoa, who is she? She's so cool. So yeah, no, I'm genuinely happy, super impressed also by all the work that you do. And yeah, no, hopefully we can, go through everything in your journey, in your life so far. And yeah, maybe we can just start. I'd invite you to introduce yourself, where you come from, where you're calling from, what you do you do these days?
Yeah, thank you so much for this time. And as I told you before, I think the more you will learn about me, the more you realize how ordinary and quite normal I am. And yeah, I think sometimes when you are passionate about something or something that is very true to your heart or true to you, to your ancestor and to your root, when you are bringing that kind of voice or informations or stories, it connects to the right people or who kind of can mirror the same thing what they go through in life. So, and speaking from heart and speaking straight of what you feel sometimes can lend it quite heavily to the one who listens. So I think I am quite fortunate in a way for being able to speak freely, and I just speak from my heart in most of the time. So could that be the reason? But in general, I'm very normal, very ordinary, actually below average people. So I come from India. a state called Mizoram, which is in the northeast of India. So if you look at the big Indian map, you would see there's the 8 different northeast states very close to Bangladesh in the northeast of India. So my state is in the boundary between Myanmar and Bangladesh. And we are a tribe, so this kind of always reflect back when people ask I'm from India, because they look at me and I don't look nothing like Indian. They're like, is your parents or your grandparents migrate from China? Are you from Japanese, from Korea? Where are you from? And I always have to go back to the history. So just with a very short history. So we are from a tribe called Lai, and also we are known either Mizo. We got name from different place. So from Myanmar side, we would be Jin, in Indian side, Mizo, and then a bit of Bangladesh, the Chittagong hill tracts. So and we have had our own land before the war, but then later we are put part of India. It dating back during colonization. So fast forward, I did environmental science studies in Asian University for Women. And after that, I went back to India when it was in 2012, where to do my environmental science impact studies in Kaladan Multimodal Transit Transport Project, which is quite big right now as well. And then that research somehow make me, because I was a science student, quite core into science, environmental, but the problem that I ended up finding at that time made me wanted to learn more about development, the impact in the local community. Then when I come back, I did development studies, and then I also did an MBA. So now I ended up being a social entrepreneur, as well as working in a tech company in Oxford. So so in a short, quite long introductory. So currently I'm based in the United States, in Oxford, and a lot of my projects I called Rochun, which operate from the UK, but for Mizoram and the greater part of the states in India.
Cool. So you said that you are based in United States, but you meant UK, right?
United Kingdom, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Because there is also an Oxford city, I think, in the US.
I started
I started to be so confused. Cool. And so we'll come back to everything that you just said. So Nori, we have time, so we'll just pull the thread. But could you introduce first maybe what is Rochun? What are the activities of Rochun?
So Rochun is essentially, loosely translates legacy. So Rochun is what you get inheritance from either your parents, or you could say from your country. It's like a legacy that you passed forward. So I named the organization Rochun mainly because of what I felt I got from my grandparents and my ancestor, and what I can pass it forward to the current young people. I myself also is still category under young people. Haven't get into my 30 years. So what we basically do, it has 2 components. One is to build a library. So we build libraries to rural communities and urban poor. A lot of them are run by either a church, missionary, or community-led schools who doesn't have a laptop or who doesn't have a library at all. And the second component is we called consultation, a one-on-one consultation. So I am a rising star, a mentee in WEDU organization since 2014, and I'm still a rising star, but right now I am as well a mentor for that organizations. But taking that kind of concept, I applied it to the organization. So I have mentored every weekend, sometimes from 10 to 20 people over the weekend. So right now we have had at least about a few hundreds. I didn't keep count on their numbers, but people can come and ask me for consultation. So my weekend will be filled with talking, asking them, giving them information. So we covered something like, for example, what their aim in life, student or youth who really struggle to know what they want to do in life, or someone who really know what they want to do in life, but not know how to approach, for example, to get higher studies, to study abroad, getting into conference, applying for funding. So the student that the youth that get my consultations are either very well to do in academic, who needs a bit of spark or opportunities or a platform to be given, or some who sometimes who are on the verge of giving up, who are on the verge, the very edge of life, who really don't know what they are doing and need the kind of, how do we say, a purpose in life, or to figure it out their purpose in life. So it quite varies from people to people. And so right now we have about 11 libraries that we provide the books as well as laptops. And I've mentored about a few hundreds youth, and we continue to do so. And apart from that, so for example, you and me, where we kind of met and know each other, is APYE, so Asian Pacific Youth Exchange Program. I went there when I was in 2017, the first performance from delegates from Mizoram. And from then on, it was a very life-changing experience for me. I enjoyed a lot. I learned so much, especially about minimalism, because our SDGs was SDG number 12, responsible consumptions and productions, and we all our team pledged to become minimalist. It really transformed my view in the world, and also focusing on inner beauty. And I think that was a very strong point in my life where I can take a much more focused approach into doing focusing more onto my social entrepreneurship route. So I have had an amazing experience, and because of that, I really want more youth from my place to do the same. So I went back, had the deal or post with the government of my states, and then we were able to send batches of students to go to Thailand and to South Korea, so for like 3 times. And also right now as we speak, we are launching the first ever APY India in my states, and we are currently doing recruitment for facilitator and delegates, and we create the program, we designed the framework, and it's very, very exciting. So that is also what Rochun is currently embarked on, and hopefully in the future there will be more project. It's not only limited to library and consultation, but the scope we take, we don't want to go too big, but at the same time we wanted to have a niche and to do well in our focus area.
So the libraries and the consultation, is it for the same youth groups, or it's 2 different groups? Or like, do you consult the same youth who make use of the libraries, or is it another youth groups?
So it's kind of I think when we talk about youth, we kind of focus mostly on age group under 30, and the library and the consultation, as I said, quite varies. So the library, some of our recipient schools are kindergarten and primary school, high school, college and university. And the one who benefit mostly from the consultations, however, are the one who are in somewhere 16, starting to finishing their high school, and then asking for information whether to take science, arts course or things like that. And a bit advanced group who already finished their undergrads, who wants to do a master abroad, or someone already have done a master's and want to do a PhD, or someone who already had either bachelor or master, but not yet found their purpose, not yet know what research, not yet know what project they want to do, or someone who kind of have a depression in that stage. So we tackle different groups, but it doesn't necessarily focus on that particular criteria, or that we kind of like oversee youth under that. Sometimes I think they are over 30, but who we would still categorize youth. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, actually it makes sense, because you mentioned the consultation was really helping youth to find their purpose, to refine their career, and it's also like personal leadership. So it makes sense that they are at the age where they have to think about it. But I also see there is a continuation, from kindergarten to when you could follow a youth from when the youth is born until 30. So actually, which is great. Now I wanted to come back. So your first library was built in your village, actually, where you grew up. And yeah, I don't know. I would love for you to share a bit how, I don't know, your village, like how did you grow up? How was it? Because I know, your Rochun is your own story as well. So yeah, I really want to understand a bit your childhood, how you grew up.
So my hometown is located in the south side, in the very border area between Myanmar and India. So the northeast itself, we are quite landlocked, quite far from the mainland. That also reflect into infrastructure, economy, well-being of the people, and standard of living. So me growing up in quite a rural, as well as far from development, far from proper roads, far from proper school or standard of living, a normal standard of living, which was the result of a never-ending war that we have had. So the colonizations that divide once, which was a very big land of, we were a nation in the making. So my tribe, 200 years ago, we were still, headhunter. We don't have religion. However, there was a civilization, a growing civilizations. However, during the colonizations, because our grandparents, our ancestors were very stubborn, and they do not want to give up their position nor chieftainship to the bigger influence of the British. So the British actually never had an interest in us, but they started having their interest when they started cultivating tea in Assam, which is a very close state with our border. And then we ended up kidnapping their daughter of the cultivation owner, because they were taking too much land of our hunting ground. And when they came to rescue Mary Winchester after a year, they realized that, these people, quote unquote, are so uncivilized, and hence they need to be civilized. There was no much resource that they envy on us, I think, at that time. But so we are talking about 1890s. But to them, they see us more of uncivilized, quite barbaric community that needs to be enlightened, and hence they start sending missionaries, and then slowly the administrations took over. But because we are from the south, which is also part of, as I said in the beginning, Chin states, and some of them down into the Gong Hill Tracts area, our king, we call them king, they are just chief, they have the small community that keep expanding. We're so stubborn. So one of them, the last one, is being my grandfather. My grandfather never give up, never give in to the British, and he died also not being Christian. So the history of that, and I used to remember my dad telling me that because my grandfather has like 5 wives and my father has about 20 siblings, and the British would keep asking my grandfather if they can take my brothers and my father and his brothers for educations back to Kolkata. And my grandfather would be like, why would I trust someone? The Mirang is in my language, the calling we called English Sap, or Mirang means someone with white people. Why would I trust white people to take care of my children? Never. So my father and his brothers, most of them didn't study at all. So, and then when education was introduced, my dad only studied up to 3, and then his father passed away, and then it was followed with the Second World War, the British retrieved, and then we followed our independence with India because we suffered a great famine. We didn't get any help, and then the underground people started to fight for India, and then that followed by 30 years. So growing up in the aftermath of, very when someone who are from 16 to 30 to 35 spend 20 to 30 years in the forest, being underground with guns and fighting for independence instead of being in school or in institutions. The country that after the peace accord was signed, even though we become all Christian during the colonizations and become a very peaceful states, the school that ran on the aftermath of that there was already very deep down destructions in the system. There was already problematic within the system, which wasn't easy to be break down. So, for example, the school that I was able to attend, our teacher barely finished primary school and they become the teacher again. So a high school teacher was just finishing class 12. So even when I studied till high school, my teacher or myself, we were barely able to speak in English. So imagine a kind of education, a kind of system and a kind of setup we grow up, which was quite down to the history that we have had. So I don't necessarily or never seen that we were that poor or that we were less advantaged or that we were less developed, quote unquote. But then when we started watching television, I realized that the world that we live in was actually quite different than the bigger world from through the TV. And, we used to watch football because we were all crazy with football, with football fan. And seeing, big building, great road, aeroplane, cars, and us having a typical, not a hut house, but there were still huts as well in my hometown. So it really intrigued me why there's such a big difference. And then I keep saying that I had such a beautiful childhood. I don't feel that I was poor nor deprived because we kind of have everything we needed. We just don't know the bar of what necessity is or what, in the pyramid of that. So we enjoyed a lot of time in the forest, in the river, running up and down the stream. And the school, though, we went to, as I said, it's just a public school. When I was in my primary school, we don't have, especially me, I never had enough book to read, nor like bedtime reading and things were out of the question because I have about 5 siblings and there was no new uniform nor new book. So the kind of book that was passed down to me was already torn down. The cover was already missing. And we don't have cursive writing. We just, no uniform. We wear slippers. And even the uniform was like a passed down kind of that. But I really enjoy being in school. I really enjoy learning regardless of the quality of education I got at that time. So fast forward as I realized the differences of what I get, but being quite lucky in a way that I learned very quickly and I was quite good at my studies. So I was always number 1 in the school. And then when I did my high school, there were also competitions where I kind of get scholarship here and there. And I was able to ended up get first to study the science, being able to get out of my hometown, and then eventually went into one of the best university through being a board scholar. And reflecting back of how I studied and how I grew up And then the differences of me then from that hometown kind of educations, accessing that kind of educations to accessing a world class of educations, I realized that it doesn't take much time for someone to have a transformations when you start providing the same resource and opportunities. So the university that I went, it was quite unique and special. We were all young women recruited from 17 to 20 Asian countries, and a lot of us were coming from all different type of backgrounds with all different type of culture and things, but with a passion to make a difference. And they kind of treat us like a future leader. That's how they always call us. So our university was Asian University for Women. Sherry Blair is our chancellor, and we have had a lot of faculties from Stanford and Harvard, and even from the UK, like Oxford and Cambridge. And what I realized at that time was then that if we were given the same resource, a resource, for example, accessing a resource to one of the best journal for academic writing, and also reading a book, and also accessing to down to our professors, I realized that in no time, our way of thinking, our way of seeing things, and the way we conduct ourselves was no different from someone who come from Harvard or from UCL. So then my thinking was that, then how about if I were able to provide that kind of same thing? So it's not that you are being born smart or you are being talented, but it's your environment that kind of shape you a lot, and also the grit and the blood and where you are from. So of course it's very important that your family upbringing, how your parent taught you, how they encourage you, and then what kind of passion you want in life. But to cope up with that, a lot of the time you might have a very strong passion and you want to change the world, but if you just don't have access to any of resources, if you're so limited by your environment, it's very difficult to get where you are or where you wanted to go. So growing up in that area and in that kind of situations, and having that kind of true life, I would say, for me was that, okay, I'm one of the very lucky, very few people to get out of that situations, but it's not enough. I know, because as I said, I'm not that smart, nor talented, nor special. I'm just an ordinary village woman, village girl, who were lucky to pick up and find my ways. But if the same opportunities, the same resources, the same platform was given to people back home, I wonder how many Alinery would come out of that situation. So it was such a strong urge for me to be able to connect that, to bring back. So I started the first library. And the reason also why, because people keep asking in this day and age when there's so many innovations, there's so many new things talking about library and books. It's like, it's not so fancy nor like so, I would say, but for me, it's quite important, because I realized that was the key, that was the difference that made. So I started the first library back in 2017. After we had the project at APYE in Bangkok, in Thailand, and also in Japan. So I was in a 1-month project with JICA, and again at that time I was a group leader for the project that we had. And when the reason why we were selected the best team at the time in JICA was, they said Alinery and her team was very good at defining their problem. So JICA always emphasized on knowing your problem very well, and I applied the same methodology that I was being told many times back in my university, like Albert Einstein said, if I were given 1 hour to solve the world's problem, I will spend 59 minutes to defining the problem and 1 minute to come up with a solution. So I always try to apply this thing into everything that I do, because a lot of the time we have so many solutions, but because we don't realize the deeper or understand the problem we wanted to solve, sometimes the solution doesn't fit. It's like a lock and key. You need to have your lock. You need to know the problem, where it's going to get, so that when you insert your key, it fits and it is able to unlock the things that you wanted to do in life. So using that philosophy, using that thing, I realized that for me, what is so important is that I go to different platforms, to the UN, to conference, the outcry of me being, being a tribal woman, growing up, being angry for the lot of the things. I was angry, I was mad at the history of what my parents has to go to, especially for my community. I keep thinking, what if there was no colonization? What if there was no war? What type of world my grandparents would have inherited me, the legacy, what they would have passed. Should I be a living queen, a living princess, nor who would I be? There were lots of options and history is so important because it shaped what you are today. And a lot of the time I was a protester. I was so mad. There were so many things to be mad at, and I kind of blame the history or the system. But then it also struck me after that incident that I do not think there's anyone that actually loves my tribe or my community than I am. And expecting, just like in the past, the English or the white people for our enlightenment, it's not going to happen this time because they are not us. So waiting for the World Bank or waiting for UN to intervene in my community is not the right solutions, because I know my community best, and hence I'm the best person to help the community. And knowing the problem that I have gone through, knowing the obstacles, what stopped me or what would have stopped a lot of other youth like me, was not being able to access resources and opportunity. So I started the first library to the high school that I graduated, and to also the small, so two school, the primary school and the high school has the library now, and then it's kind of expanded. When I did the first project, I did also studies, and I realized that even in high school alone, we have about 650 and not even 5% has library. But when you go to like college or even like in the UK here, every school has library. It's a sense part of it. You don't go to the kitchen not having a burner to cook. Mm-hmm. But then in my place, it's like quite something to talk about. You don't know. Even if you have a library, the 5% would be like a ghost library. There would be one book or one computer. It doesn't work. So yeah, that's how it started about.
Cool. Thank you so much for this. It was so fascinating. I have like 1 million questions in my head, but let's see if I can pick one. Okay, let's go back to Mizoram and your high school years. So first there's one sentence I love, which is, you don't know what you don't know. And I was always fascinated by you, in the sense that you managed to understand what was beyond your village, what was beyond your state, and make it a strength. But for me, I feel like it's so difficult, because how are you supposed to know that there is something outside if you don't know, right? It's like a vicious circle. And I felt like, is it only TV that made you realize this? Or is it something else? Or is it really just watching TV that made you realize there is another world actually out there?
I think one thing that from my environmental science and to the ecology and the whole ecosystem was that we were doing this burning, and so burning, they called it, how do they call it? They cut the trees and then they burn, and then every year they do that. They repeat the same. So the Juming cultivations, we call it. When we were in primary school, every year for cultivations, they would cut down a big plot of land for all the household, mostly who are not government employed, who would be relying on farming and cultivations. They would cut down trees in the early February, and then would burn at the end of March or early April. And every time what happened was that every time when they do the burning that day, our school needs to be shut down, because a lot of the boys needs to go home and then protect their house from burning. Because when you burn the whole area forest nearby the village, the fireworks sometimes come and then landed on their roof. And if the roof is made of hut, then it can burn. And we have had incidents where it kind of burned even half the village or a lot of houses. And I was just, I think, class 3 and 4, like level 3 and 4, that really giving me a heart ache when things happen, because the whole cloud, the whole sky become very dark, and you would see wildfire when it comes out. And then my at the time there was this calling of animals and insects and birds and every inhabitants that were in that. I can't comprehend why we had to do that. I couldn't understand. And it kind of really prompted me a question that there must be another way. There must be another way, without having to cut down all the trees, without having to kill all the animals and all the inhabitants in that particular area. And I keep asking questions like, why? I would go back there. Why do we have to burn? And my mom at that time, or my dad would say that you need to burn the trees, cut down so that the soil become more fertile, and you need to grow your vegetables and your food. But I'm like, there must be another way. You're just burning, and then the smoke come out. It just really made me sad. And I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor for human or a doctor for animals. If the human are destroying the animals, I'm going to be a doctor for animals. So that kind of also questions asking me, there must be something, there must be alternative. And then as I said, so TV was a big influence because we didn't have TV at the time. So when we started having TV, like the whole house would be full of people. So every Sunday, because there's also a lot of cut down. So Sunday would be the day where there would be like power for a few hours. At that time, you give all your attention to whatever was broadcasted into the TV. And then you got it, the pictures, the video that come out was so vivid into your life. There was no, as I said, no magazine or much of the outside that we can know of. And of course, not knowing English so much, we don't listen to radio that often in English. So our main windows to outside world was television. And my curiosity of asking those questions was developed as I grew up and witnessing things around me. And then, that trigger a bigger problem. What happened elsewhere? Do they do the same? Do they burn their own forests in a place and countries that I've seen from TV? So there are a few things, but I think those are the ones that kind of like very strong that I still remember.
And was it why you were so motivated to, because you said you were always first in class, you loved learning. Was it because you wanted to learn about what happened elsewhere, or was it because you wanted to go out of the village at some point? Why did you study so hard?
I think I just enjoy learning new things. And I think I'm very fortunate to have parents who are my parents, of always asking me questions and also finding solution on my own. So my mom raised us as if my mom was a stepmom. So in the house, all the household chores, everything we had to learn. And then I always find to do things in a simple way or an easy way. And then there's this always like, how can I play? So that if I can finish my chores and then I can play, so that there's always something in my head. And then my dad, on the other hand, was very deep. He was very philosophical, and he was very, very wise. And always when I asked a question, he would ask me back, why would that be? Why do you think this is the right? Do you think what can be something? Can this be something or that? So, and I think the kind of thing that they put it back on the table at the very young age already kind of enhanced my critical thinking. And just not accepting or not getting what they tell me, or not questioning back. I question back everything. And even in the class, when our teacher teach us and something that I don't understand, I would question back. And so I think I was just quite maybe I was born quite curious, but at the same time, my parents kind of influenced me to just not accepting as it is, but to question. So when I kind of get those informations, I always think that there must be a better way. There must be a reason behind this. What is it? If it is the situation, like, can I change it? Because a lot of the things, even though, as I said, I've really enjoyed my childhood, I find a lot of things that are complicated. I find a lot of things that we are deprived of. I find a lot of things that we don't have, but I can see that somebody else has. So I was like, why is the difference? And I think, I thought this is what everybody have had thought or think about, but maybe I was a bit different.
What is a perspective? So that might sound as a very stupid question, but as a youth from your village, I mean, what is the perspective, life perspective? Are people going out of the village to work? Is everyone staying in the village? And did you aim to get this scholarship to study in Bangladesh? And how did that happen?
I think recently, yes, for studies, because we only have up to class 12. At that time when we were growing up, it was only up to class 10. So if you are lucky, if you're good at school and you are able to manage class 10, then if your family has it, if you have a relative study being in the town or in the city, then there's a chance of you to pursue your higher education. But a lot of the time, there is also dropout at primary, at high school, getting married, eloping and so on. And also family sides. So a lot of family needs their daughter and their sons to help them in the farm, especially if you're the elder one. You need to help your family to raise your remaining siblings or your family or your household. So in my case or in my family, I always wanted to study higher, and my dad always he kept saying, and he continued to do that, and he said, I don't have much for you, but you have all the freedom. I want to study till there's no name, and learn music, travel around the world, explore. So my father or my mom never stay home, take care of us and be in this place. But for them and their aspirations, and like many parents, is that one day their daughter and son will do something, become educated, get out of town, get a job, or do something else, so that they become a salvation. Because our mode of living, the standard of living was so low that if you have children who are good at studies, your parents have all their hope in you that you'd become either a doctor or engineer, and that you would take them out from whatever situations they are in. So yes, there was a very strong motivations from the parents as well as within ours as the youth to study, to do well in school, and so that we get out. And but I don't have much information about scholarship at all, which was also thanks to my dad. He found it in the newspaper. My dad was a very well reader. Whenever he can find, he would read it. And even though like newspaper was an outdated coming from the city, by the time it reached to him, he would read all the columns, the articles. And then he found about the university. I was doing my class 12 studying science in Aizawl. And then he called me up. He said, "There's a thing called, it's called scholarship. It's Harvard based. It's for women. Can you figure it out? Can you learn more about it?" And then I went up and I asked about it, and so that's where I get to know about the scholarship. And I didn't think much about studying abroad, but definitely if I did well in my science, I would have to study engineer or doctor, and that needs to be outside of my states. But that was the scope, but not about around the world, even though that was in my childhood. But with the growing up in that reality, it was out of the questions. If you don't have money, how can you kind of think to study is quite out of your zone. So yeah.
Yeah, I find it very interesting because, the newspaper that your father found it on, it sounds very anecdotic, right? But in the end, it's what, changed your whole life, if I can say that.
Yes.
So yeah, I know it's funny.
I know, yeah. This is why everything, even though my dad passed away, my charity, my organization, my philosophy in life, it actually all come from him.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel the role that your parents played, either, this opportunity, but also the way they, raised you, developed your critical thinking. No, that's great. And so, yeah, then you applied and then you got in and then you moved it's in Chittagong.
Yes.
And I mean, I guess Chittagong doesn't look like your village at all. How was the transition?
The funny thing was, because back then, even now, when you think about Bangladesh, what information comes to you? So again, this is the danger of a single story. Media plays so much role with every country labeling things, so that once you think of a state or a country or a nation, there's usually one picture or two coming and resonating into you. So for me, when I did my science, so in India, all parents, if you're good at study, they want you to become either a doctor or engineer. That's it. There was no such thing as arts, nor something in between. They want you to become engineer and become either scientist or doctor. This is what everybody look up to. So I was quite hoping to be able to do engineer, but then when I found this out about the scholarship and the university, which is liberal arts, that I've never heard about, and also in Bangladesh, all we know about Bangladesh at the time was cyclone, flood, rickshawala. Like, who would be interested in going to a place like that we don't know? And also because I'm Christian, and at the time, again, being a single store, being in that, Muslim to us was quite a religion that we think that are most into, nothing good but terrorism and that kind of thing. So it was very biased. It was very one-sided story that I grew up with, and to face it. So I was very confused, not very excited at all. And because I was able to secure quite a good school back in India as well to do engineering, because I was one of the top 10 in the board exam in science. But my father and one of my teacher at that time told me that go there, explore, even though it's in Chittagong, the university is run based in Harvard. All the headquarters is in Massachusetts. It's a very young university, and the campus and everything, the all curriculum would be very different. If you don't like it, you can come back and you can do your engineering here. So, and because I got the full scholarship, I was a board scholar, and there was a lot of money. And as I said, not having fun or someone to rely on financially, for me, it was too great a risk to miss. So I went ahead and but if that did not land it, if the newspaper did not land it to my dad, or if he wasn't curious about to ask me, I think I would just ended up being quite normal. Not that I'm not normal now, but just, I would just go to typical university in India, and God knows what would happen.
And okay, so just for the timeline, you entered university. It was which year?
2010.
2010, and your first library was 2017.
Yes.
Okay. So what happened during these 7 years?
So this is a big transformation part of my life. So being 1991, kind of half of it was high school, and then back home being in India. The university that I attended was a 5 years course, so it's quite big. And to secure your scholarship, which is a full funding for me at that time, was about $15,000 US. You need to keep up with your studies and always be on the merit. And as I mentioned, it was a big transformation for me, not only on physical and mental, but also on philosophy, grow up, and I feel like I sometime now look back and kind of see myself as if I was in a cave for a really long time, with a lot of like a teaching that kind of like outside of that is the danger world, outside of that is that. But then actually when you came out and you see a world as it is, equations even to your own religion and belief, even the Bible, like I'm Christian, but a lot of the time the way how things were being taught, how women are being treated, how the world is viewed, how you see religion, how you see other community, how you see other nations. So all of them, even though I went there to do environmental science engineering, there was no such thing environmental engineering, and I almost gave up to come home. And then when I did my summer, my dad told me that, you say that it's a Harvard base and it's going to be for women future leader, and in that school they must teach you something that make you become someone, so that even if you're not engineer, maybe you can become something where the engineer works for you. So it kind of in a way, like for example, right now I'm a strategy manager, but all the engineer, like tech engineer and all of these things, they are actually working with me, not under me, but working with me. And that was like, okay, fine. I thought, because my dad and my mom would be like so stubborn. Oh, if you're not engineer, that's it. Or if you're not doctor, that's it. This is what a lot of parents told their children, to like, you cannot pursue something else unless it's X and Y. But my parents were not like that. So they were able to, open the curiosity and to try, even if there's another option. So it was a liberal arts curriculum with the core environmental science, and but every class there's a religion, there's ethics, there's politics. So liberal arts curriculum is very, very huge. So you not only learn about your particular major core, but you actually learn almost everything, and that is also why it takes a longer year. And when I did my on my second year, there was we all have to go back to our community and do research. So in my case, and again, in every class, there is this leadership course in kind of embedded in the courses. Your public speaking, the way you ask questions, the way you understand the world, and so it was kind of embedded in a way that our curiosity was enhanced in a massive level. So when I went back to my hometown in 2012 for the summer, I was looking at what type of project to do or what type of research to be done. I was just UG2 second year. And at that time, there was a thing called Multimodal Transit Transport Project, called shortly said Escalatant project under Indian Look East policy. So essentially what they try to do is they are trying to create one of the biggest seaport in Sittwe, which is down Myanmar, very close to where the Rohingya problem is situated. And that Indian government is going to fund all the money for the constructions. And once the seaport is created, so it's going to be one of the big hub, and hence we, who used to be such a landlocked, who doesn't even have an open road between Myanmar or India, or Myanmar, India, and Bangladesh, would become an east gate of India. So there was so much investment. I was curious, because if it was such going to be good, why we never had, because we are very landlocked. So my state and the whole Northeast state, like for example, for me to go to Bangladesh, my hometown in Chittagong is only 300 kilometers, but there's no open road. So I have to go to Kolkata. I have to fly from Aizawl to Kolkata, which is about 1,500 kilometers, and then from Kolkata going back to Chittagong. And Chittagong and my hometown is only 300 kilometers.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and in the olden times, my grandparents, my father used to go back and forth to Chittagong, getting their buying and things, doing their trading. But because now that it's become international and all the borders are closed, and they have been closed for years, but why now? So why right now, all of a sudden, we're going to become the East Gate of India? So my understanding and my question was that why? and also what that kind of big measure constructions of road it would have done to the people of my community. So I went back, and then I was looking at environmental impact, ecological problem, but what I ended up finding was a lot of compensation problem. So, Mizoram is a very hilly area. So if you look at these Eurasian plates, so, Himalaya, that coming down. So in the long time, billions of years ago, the two plate, Indian plate and the Eurasian plate collides. So when two plates collide, if it's ocean and land, the land one is older, so it goes down and creates tsunami and things like that. But if it's a land to land, because they two are very bugged, they don't, one doesn't go down under the other plate. They created a mountain. That is why Mount Everest is increasing every year. So we are in that territorial, and hence our I would say the geology point of view, our land is not too old, and hence every time monsoon, there's a lot of landslide, and when they are creating that big road and cutting down all the forests, my curiosity is what happened then to the environment, what happened then to the community. And what really big thing happening was that aside environmental impact was huge, but for me what was more important was that the community that it affected. So on the Myanmar side, it was still under regime. So Aung San Suu Kyi was recently released, but it was still under a big heavy regime. So a lot of the people who are working in the construction, there was human rights violations, there was sexual abuse. In my state, in my part of the states, there were a lot of compensation problems. So a big more corrupted happened in a way for officers in revenue. They would be able to create lots of fake land and revenue, so hence they claim a lot of money, and the one who actually are losing their house and their farm and their area don't even know how to claim. So like in places like in my hometown, you would have a widow or who doesn't even study. The way they took the land was that, so a normal road would need at least 45 degree, but because we don't have enough of that, and houses were built just by the road, they would be taken almost 90 degree, and some of them would have their pole, the house pole, already coming out. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to claim for compensation. They don't even know what to do about it. And because I can speak Myanmar language, so the teens died, I can go, because it's just a river, I would go illegally back and forth and speak their language. So when I go and do the research of their side again, for me was that the realization was that, yes, I care about environment a lot, but I do care about my other human beings. I do care about what is happening. And then that was the questions that make me wanted to know about what big development does, what small development does, what is a macro crore billion project does to our community and to the local people, because the World Bank, also the UN, and also Indian government, it's a big thing. So the thing that they market is like, there's going to be a lot of job recreations, you guys are going to be the Eastgate, but then by doing so, if it actually destroyed the community, if it actually destroyed the local people and us, for example, not knowing what is happening to us, not knowing the impact, then we are actually going to be completely not destroyed, I'd say, but the impact that can be a positive and negative is huge. So I went back to my district, my state, my council, and I've asked, can I do a research? And then can you fund it? And I said, how do we do that? What would be they say? You can say, I said, you can just call as internship. And they're like, what is internship? But because I was so convinced, I was so determined, big projects is coming in our states, in our district, and we don't even know what their aim. So I need to learn, I need to study about it, call it internship. So I've asked for funding. I've asked for a jeep, like a motor and a videographer, so that we can go all the way down to the border. So I spent a month, and I went all the way down to all the different villages. I interview people. I look at the road they did. And then so that video that we created at that time was also aired in local channel quite a few times. So when I bring that studies back, I have a professor, his name is Christian Gerard. He is our development studies professor, and we did the summer project presentations, and he was so interested. And then I was very protester at that time. As I said, I was boiling with questions. I was like, this is danger. This is whatever is going to happen. We need to be on the top of it. It could be a very positive thing, but at the same time, it could actually destroy our community and our tribe. So that is when I started to look at development studies. I took it as a minor, and then the first was to study really about Big D, what happened, the creation of IMF, World Bank, the first, second, third world creation, and all of them, and then looking into a small D, the top-down, bottom-up approach, and I ended up taking a social entrepreneurship route. So that was one on a bigger scale to do my curiosity on development studies. And also the last semester that I did with garment industry in Bangladesh, looking at women menstruations, how they practice. If you are working in a factory, manufacturing clothes, and if you earn about $50 a month and you have about 5 children to feed, how do you maintain your menstruations when it comes to that? And the physical, the psychological impact, looking at all of that. So as I said, our university was so good that it forced us to get out. And we also have a lot of projects in the slum. Sometimes we spend a week with the beggars in the street. We just sit down next to them, sometimes help them to beg, to learn about their whole stories. Why they ended up on the street, what are the reasons, do they have a safety net, what factors force them to back on the streets, or whatever sector that they are in. So at the end of the day, my experience of being in 5 years in Bangladesh was one of the best things that happened to me, being in that university, because it really allowed me to see the reality of the world into a very, very deeper lens, and also being lucky enough to get into a kind of university where we were able to access one of the best people, scholars, resources, and journal, understanding about the Big D not in a one-way story, but in a way that was very, very profound, so that you can see the world as it is without being filtered. And I think that the whole transformations, and also being women, studying about your own religion, a lot of us, for example, some of my friends who were Muslim were so rebellious to what they did, they ended up shaving their head. In my case, I ended up getting a profound, deeper understanding of love, deeper understanding of God. And then I also come from a very structured religion, like the different denominations. I learned that in a religion, it's not about pleasing God. It's about your relationship that you enter to God, wherever you are. And that, to me, every religion is beautiful, as long as you were able to find and connect it, the creator, if you believe in so. So seeing the world as it is, instead of becoming it was a very black and white kind of thing that I grew up. But then being in 5 years in that university, like everything has nuance. So there was no such thing as black and white, and there's always something behind another. And so that 5 years transformations, and then coming out of that, I was supposed to get my master's into the US, but unfortunately my father passed away, so I ended up staying a year back at home. So, and then after that, 1 year after, I started getting back, because when I lost my dad, it was my whole world was just collapsed. So for example, APYE was the only, after a year, that I started getting out of my comfort zone, or getting out of that deep kind of fall that I had. And so in the long short, that was like the 7 years of life that I have gone through. Yeah.
And you said one sentence which I found very powerful. You said you were a protester before. Are you still a protester?
No, I think I now wanted to call myself a solutionist.
Okay. And does it mean that you are not a protester at all anymore?
Before it would be like 90%. Now I think it goes down to 20%.
And you became a solutionist by adopting also, because you said you discovered social entrepreneurship, you chose to become a social entrepreneur. I mean, I guess it's linked, obviously.
Yes.
So you discovered social entrepreneurship by discovering more the development sector and all its flaws and everything about the reality. Is that how you ended up in APYE in the end?
Yes, partly was yes. Because we did a lot of, when we did development studies at the time, it was Millennium Development Goals. So we were looking at a lot of big projects like World Bank, looking at the case studies. I also had 3 years internship in Export-Import Bank of Korea in Seoul, looking at, so it was a lot of big D, so big development of why big country invests. So with aids, what's the difference between aids and grants, what they actually do they actually, the white burden, a lot of the project that someone in the Western did to in Asia or in Africa, or what's the OECD countries does to developing countries. Do they actually help? Do they destroy it more? So we have had an extensive study and research on that. And at the same time, we also look at the small d, like the bottom-up approach and things like that. So my curiosity at that time was that, because also before I used to be quite, and I think sometimes I'm still am, that I was very aspired to at one point work in the UN, because at the time how I see UN was, goodwill, a very strong nation that is completely clean and doing effective job. And I want to be like either an ambassador in that or becoming coordinator at some point. But then the more I study about it, and always that all the time connecting with my community to find a more effective solutions or more effective approach. For me, I realized that I don't necessarily need a UN to intervene in my community, because waiting that could take my lifetime. The same with waiting for another big organization, or like, as I said, the Western people to bring enlightenment. It could take forever. I was a rising star at the time, and when they introduced about APYE with the new Sustainable Development Goals, because I was already doing Millennium Development Goals, and I want to see, is it just nomenclature change? Do they change the name? Are they going to do something good about it? And finding that it's happening in Asia and in Thailand, I was quite interested, and we got scholarship from some rising stars, and I applied, and it was a competition, and I got it. And I was the first one from my states, or the entire Northeast. I think there was just 1 or 2 at the time from India who were participating. So, and I think APYE was at the very early stage. I think that was the second time that they do, or the first time, I don't remember. So I went there in Bangkok, and that's how I started participating in APYE.
Okay, and just for everyone, APYE, so it means Asia Pacific Youth Exchange, and it's this 15 days program with like young people from all over Asia Pacific, and basically they go through different trainings to understand better problems of local communities in the countries where they are, and start working on different solutions to address these problems. And so just to explain, and then back to you. So you said earlier that APYE was like this another life-changing moment. Why was it so life-changing? Because I've seen now you've came back to so many APYEs. You are also, as you said, with this APYE India, providing scholarships to many people from Mizoram. I met some of the teams recently this summer. So why was it so impactful?
Yeah, so I think if we look at not generalizing, APYE could be very impactful and very meaningful, but it could also mean just a conference to a lot of people, like a one-time conference that they attend. I think it was very impactful for me at that time because firstly, as I said, I lost my dad 2015 in November. And 2016 was a very difficult time for me because I had to reassess my purpose in life. Because before then, it was all about pleasing my parents, especially my dad, making him happy, making him proud of who I become. And I was about to embark on another studies in the US. And it doesn't happen. Everything kind of fall into play. That I had a great depression. I couldn't understand why my dad suddenly passed away. It was a very fast cancer, and it doesn't last even more than a month. And in order to finding another purpose in life, when I just lost all I want at the time, I think it also that I want to do so many things, but most importantly was to make my father proud and to make my father happy. And when he's gone, and he was my advisor, he was my anchor, he was my everything. And when he's not there, I got lost. And APYE, when I applied, I was curious and I'm very excited, but it came from not knowing what to do into using and wanting that platform to find my purpose in life, to learn and unlearn. I think basically unlearn, because as I said, the whole experience, I become quite, I think, an expert in my own understanding of development and how the world runs. And but when I came to APYE, it was a very unlearning thing for me because of how they do the local immersion. And particularly in our case, we went to a learning center called Mapyong. It is where they practice the philosophy of the late King of Thailand, philosophy, economy, sustainability, of how they see the world, they see the environment, and they applied one philosophy called feed the soil and let the soil feed the plants. So the whole area used to be a very rural community with no youth in going back to help their family. Everybody comes to Bangkok. The land was dry, but then one of the general of the late king, sorry, my dog is just trying to come to the picture, and trying to apply the philosophy of the late king, whereby he went back and did a very, very amazing thing, where all the dry land where it's not enough for crops and things to plant, they put the hay, put natural fertilizer, allowing to become a habitat area again for microbes and then the small organism, and then in a few years turning that land to become a suitable land for plants. And they were able to convert hectares and hectares of that, and they run the center in 2 different ways with the philosophy from the monk. Life is not permanent, and then hence if it's not permanent, how do you live your life, not owning things to yourself but to giving it back. And then it's almost like the philosophy and the teaching is very close to Finland, where if you wanted to know about maths, say if you're 7th grade, you go out and you measure the field of the rice. A 7th grader knows every plant, what they are, their family, if they were for medicine, if they are for cosmetic, can they kill you, is it a good, they literally know every living being around them. And they all are very, very down to earth people. They know how to grow a rice, to cook a rice, and not to leave a single grain left behind when they eat. And being very down to earth, whereby I mean they have maybe few clothes of them. And there's also another project called Zero Baht. So, but all the house and everything they have was no money. They built from one clay house, and then they keep going. So it was run by Buddhist students. And so when we were there, it was paradise. The training center looks perfect. But then we had to go there to find out what problem they have, which we couldn't figure it out. We can't find what they have. But then after we do more survey and research, we learned that they do have a plastic issues. So because so many people visited every day, like hundreds of them, who brought foods into plastics. And in the morning when the student went around with the monk in the village, everyone will be giving them with the food that is already cooked in a plastic, in a container. That is an easy and much more efficient way. So when they come back to the learning center to eat, they would have plastics and junk that are like 5 to 6 full of bin, and they don't know what to do because some of them could be recycled, some are not, and they were quite struggling. And then when we do a longer project, we realized that actually at the end of the day it's your mindset. What happened? How do you deal with it when plastics were not invented? How do the monk eat? Why the monk have one bowl when they cannot? Why they eat in the same bowl, regardless of what kind of food that goes in? And then we were able to have students who pledged and who volunteered to be minimalist again, like we all did, to never use plastic, or like never use would be a very strong word, but to use as in only when it's so necessary. And then to not waste food, to not waste, and then also me, because I already had the big project in Bangladesh with the garment industry, I also pledged that time to never buy new clothes anymore, only when I really need it. And even when I need it, I would first go to charity shop to buy clothes for like conference or to speak. And then essentially what it does is that as a human being, when you are into the world, what you bring in, responsible productions and consumption. Are you responsible when you are consuming? Are you responsible in your production? What type of waste you're producing? What are you consuming? Is it necessary? So it's really kind of narrow it down in a way. And it was, we were not, when we go back to Bangkok, we were not given, or we were not among the top 3. But what was so important was that we were so determined to change the community to a plastic-free community. And I think we were the only group who were able to transform it. So we have students who volunteer, who already had that as a burning, because they already care much more than we do, because as I said, almost everything else was paradise, was perfect in every many ways. We left, but we keep communicating with them. And then our solution was, again, very simple, because we keep spending a lot of time research and surveying, interviewing one after, from the leader of the center to everyone in the one. And what we found was the mindset. If we were able to change your mindset that plastic is way too convenient, if it is way too cheap, if we were to eliminate that, and if we were able to find ways to deal with plastics in many forms. So, for example, we, instead of getting a thing, because the monk has a great influence to the community. So when we were able to convince the monk to ask the community when they receive blessings not to give food in plastic, so then the student had to volunteer to carry a tiffin box, a steel one. So then they carry that because every morning they go with the monk anyway. So they would carry, 2 of them would carry to both sides. And then, because the monk requests the community not to use plastic, the community obey or accept the request, and hence they would just pour whatever they cook straight to the tiffin box, which is made of steel. Then the student take it home, they eat it, they washed, and then the first big problem finished. And then the center put it in their website. So even when we go there, because we need to be respectful and mindful of the culture, they said don't wear tank top, wear proper dress. Similar to that, they say do not bring plastic, do not bring that. And in 3 months' time, thanks to the volunteer and thanks to the passionate people who pledged to do that, the whole center become a plastic free. And so when we go back, we try to do the same as much as where we go. And for me, I find it very challenging first into the airplane, because I travel a lot and everything comes in plastics. And so for me, when I was able to do that, changed, not because of the price or becoming known in APYE, but being able to actually bring a real change to the community that we went there, to me was a life-changing experience. It was so impactful, and it was a very eye-opening for me to be able to find smaller solutions that actually fit to the bigger problem. And then once we're able to tackle one, it's actually, it has triple effect on it. So yeah, that was my experience with my first APYE. I don't know if everyone had the same impactful experience as I am, but I really wish that people do that and take APYE not only as to study what the 17 goals are, but to actually bring change into the community that they care about, either elsewhere or for their own.
Oh, it's great that you actually brought change to the community. And because, I thought you would answer, yeah, it was life-changing because I was, surrounded by youth from everywhere in Asia Pacific, because it was very energetic, because, I don't know, like all these things. But it's because for me, I love APYE. I don't know what impact people can have if they stay, 1 week in a community. So for me, the impact of APYE, it's more transformational for the youth rather than for the community. So for me, it really makes me feel good. I mean, positively surprised that in your experience, it's not only about you, but more about the community. And I think if that's the case, then the APYE reached its goal, I guess. But especially since you also work with this community, that's your daily fight. So I guess that was very important for you. And it also, you said early in the episode that you somehow, and you were inspired by the minimalistic thing of the community. You became even more minimalistic after. I feel like it also brought you transformational change, but it's maybe something different than other people who I think APYE is kind of experience which is different for everyone. Also, what you expect, what you take out of it. Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to come back on the library because it's a big part of your life. You mentioned, so you had this first library in your hometown. And how do you build a library? I mean, it sounds so easy, but if you ask me to build a library, I don't know.
So after that APYE, as you mentioned, for me was very transformational. It was a life-changing experience for me. And when you were able to change the community or do a greater thing for someone, it come back in a much bigger fold for you. So when we actually doing good things for others, we think when we bring happiness, but it's a very selfish act. You are happy when you see someone else happy. So this is a very charitable thing, I think a lot of philosophers ask, the most selfish thing that a person can do to themselves is to make someone else happy. Because when you see smile, it's resonate and it's contagious and it's actually coming back to you in a much bigger fold. So for me, after that experience, being able to feel that I can actually change community, I can actually do something, that was already a big, massive boost for my confidence and also of my way of finding solutions. Slowly transforming, getting more into from being a protester into a solutionist. And then so that was in January, and straight away in March, I went to, again, I get another scholarship to do a project, on development studies project, International Development Forum in Tokyo University, correlating with JICA. And we went there for a month. And at that time, the topic was 3 different topics. One was garment industry in Bangladesh, soybean in Kenya, and a flower industry in Colombia or something. I don't remember. We were assigned a garment industry, and I went there to give presentations and a paper, and as well as to lead the team of about 7 people from different countries. And again, at that time, we did the project. We study a lot about Uniqlo, of how they do their garments and how responsible they are to the whole the supply chain, and also asking a lot of survey to community and to people of Tokyo Youth University. Do they pay attention to what brand they are wearing? What goes behind getting this, or versus buying a cheap band versus a massive, all of these things, and the local, how things were done. And when our project become the number one, I really, it struck me. So I have a teammate, very wonderful people. One of them was from Poland, and she's been since the best friends to this day. And she said, Alinery, you keep talking about how we want to bring change to your community, how you talk about how much you need library and things. And I think you actually can do it. I'm sure you can do something. And at that time was a pilot project going on under We Do. So they were giving out 10 grand US dollar for all the rising stars. We're all women to do a project, a building project in their own community. It was just a pilot project because there was a donor who wants to invest on that. But it was all a group project. You can't do it by yourself. But I was the only rising star from my states and on the entire Northeast state, so I don't have a group mate. But at that time, this founder, the CEO of We Do, Maria, was in Tokyo. They lived in Tokyo at that time, and we were catching up and we were meeting. And I explained to him, how passionate I am now that I have two big experiences, and then the solutions at the first one worked, and then the second one I were able to lead the team that become the final team. And I think that I might be able to just do this for my community, not necessarily only for the sake of competition, but to bring something in real. He said, okay, go ahead and apply. I went back in April. My mom had her surgery, and then we went in the hospital. But in 3 days' time, I was able to write 20 pages of proposal because I was so into it. I explained the whole thing, the criteria that is needed, why I need it, why it's important, that why library was important. So other projects were about, a community center for women or this and that. For me, it was library. It was that clear. So I explained why it was so clear in the earlier episode. And I submitted. And I was so believing in the project that I gave. I already started looking for organizations who can donate books and laptops. And then my best friend, who were at the time in the US, also has her. So we grew up together. She's from Tibet. She studied at the time in the US to do her master's, and she also have organizations. She was helping women, Tibetan women, traditional women, to be able to help them equip with better tools. So like providing laptops, and she introduced me to an organization called LabDo. So LabDo is an organization. They operate in 126 countries. Where we did is it's zero emission, zero funding. Whoever wants to be in LabDo only are there only for social. And what they do is that innovating the reuse of laptops. So we don't buy a new laptop. We took old laptop who still have a good run of age. We sanitize it and we install educational software. So one laptop has about thousands of books from all offline Wikipedia, Aga Khan Academy, and like the best 100 history. Everything is in there. So one laptop is like thousands worth of books equivalent to that. So I reached out to that LabDo asking for laptops, and when they shortlisted me for the final, I said, you need to give me this funding because I already have books and laptop is on the way, so I can't back out now. And so there was two very interesting projects. So I think they had to find another more funding. So they ended up giving two awards. So we each got 7,000 grand, I think, at the time. And so that was around May, towards the end of May. And then my aunt was diagnosed with cancer, and I had to take her to Mumbai. And then I think 2017 was a very busy year for me. 2015, at the end, I lost my dad. 2016, I just stay home mourning and just, having a very difficult period. 2017 was like, I was able to kind of, get back from where I was, and then wanted to find a better way, wanting to find depth of questions. And I think I got my energy back when I was able to let my dad pass, because I couldn't believe why he left. But then when a 1 year anniversary happened, we had to song to play in local channel. And I because before I don't even want to look at the photos of my dad, or I don't want to do anything with it. And then I was able to relieve and being able to slowly say to admit that he's gone, but actually he's not gone. I'm not losing him, but I still have him, because his philosophy, his teaching, his love, and everything he gave me was enough for a lifetime. So I started to celebrate instead of in grief, and then I think that really gave me lots of strength. And with my faith, I was able to finally admit that my father, my God in life, is taken away from me, so that I can actually fully rely on to the everlasting God in heaven. So the Father in heaven, instead of, it's difficult, it's hard to admit that way, so that somebody took that you have, so that you can truly rely on the everlasting, the true Father who will look after you, and that there was no middleman between. It was difficult, but slowly I have to admit that way, and that my Father is still in heaven, and that I can truly rely on the miracle of my faith and on my faith. So and then I was in the hospital with my aunt for 3 months. I was also applying from Sussex. I was applying to a few different scholarships and to different universities. And also because I wanted to do development studies, I applied for Oxford and so many places. And I actually got quite a few offers. And at the same time, I got awarded to do the library, and all of them were happening. So then I came back in September and August, and then we built the first library from the grant that we have, and then we have the books and everything sorted. And then I came to do my master's, and I got full funding for the business studies. So even though it was a general MBA, for me was okay. Now I got my funding. I built one library. What else? Because I don't have any more funding available for the next one. But then as I do research, there are much more. And then I was like, okay, my next goal is that to envision a place and to envision the schools whereby I am able to provide library to all schools in my state. And there are a lot of schools in my state, and there are lots of requests that needed to build the library. And then I know with my development studies that there's so much wealth and there's so much resource in the world. It's just very skewed. And then how do I find to be able to channel those resources? And because I don't have any finance background, and I think, okay, MBA actually might help me to find a way to channel those resources. So that's how the library and my master kind of continue together.
It's very interesting because you said three things throughout the 1 hour and a half we've been discussing. The first thing is, you always manage to turn negative emotions into a strength. Like you were telling me, in your hometown, you see trees are burning, so many things you don't understand. You turn it into curiosity, drive to learn and find alternatives. All your anger, the fact that you protest, you turn it into becoming a solutionist. And now you just said, the grief, the loss of your father, you turned it into, what's the word you use? I forgot. You turned into, I had it. You said one word. I had it. You turned your grief into
strength.
Yeah, into something positive, into celebration. Like you celebrate the learnings of your father because he brought you so much already for a whole lifetime. So I think that's your secret strength to be able to turn anger, grief, it can be very difficult emotions, but somehow you manage to use all this energy to make something positive out of it. And no, that's great. That's so cool. I wanted to come back on, you told me 2 times today, one in the interview, one before, that you are a below average quote person. Why do you say that?
Well, I think it's where you see yourself, and I think so. My now husband actually put it a picture of the quote says, "You are not average," on my door in my office, And when you read it, whether you see above average or below average, it's a mirror of what you feel inside. And I think when you learn something or when you do studies, the more you learn about it or the more higher you study, you realize that how little you know. So to some, I might be quite amazing people or quite above everybody to be able to do things. But then the more I am into that ladder and the more I realize how individual, how ordinary people are able to do extraordinary things, I see myself not as great nor average, because I actually did so little compared to a lot of the people. But then it really depends on the angle that you are measuring. And I think I tend to be quite harsh on myself. So even as I was telling this morning to my other housemate, that I always, from a very young age, as you say, like there's this road when you have hardship and you experience difficulties, you can go into a very bad way or like a very dark way, versus you can turn that into something revolutionary. And for me, because even though I go through hard things, I always say that touch wood, there could be another more stronger that coming, and there could be something more worse that I could be into. So it's never the challenge that I have, because I look around and I see someone going through harder than me who was still able to turn things around. The same things apply to achievement and doing great things in life, because I might have done few things here and there, but I look at other great exemplary of people that I listen to or that I read what they do. And I realize that at the age or at where they are, they have done so much more than I do. So that's made me quite humble and not thinking myself above average at all.
No, but I think it's it's great to have these people you look up to, because it become, I guess, your engine to always do more. And it's funny. I think I mean, I wouldn't have said it in this way, but I was thinking about it this morning in the shower, that I know I meet so many, very active young people. I mean, not necessarily young people, but people who are doing great stuff. And I always not compare, but always look at them and I'm like, oh, they do so many things, which encourages me. No, it can either discourage you because you're like, I'll never reach this, but it can encourage you as well to be like, okay, these guys are doing so much, I have to at least do as much as them. So no, I think it makes me happy to hear it from you also. If you could go back in time and meet the Alinery just before you moved to Bangladesh, you are 18. Would you tell her anything?
It's also contrary to that perspective or that way of thinking. If I were to meet the younger Alinery, I would have said, well done, great job. Because as much as in life, because there's never ending things to learn or to achieve, because you are destined, if you believe it, to do for a greater purpose. If you believe it, and if you believe in that, the university and everything else will give you the power to be able to do that. You can become powerhouse if you believe in it. But at the same time, I never spent a day or regret comparing myself to someone else. I never do that. I never compare myself in the way to, for example, oh, I'm more prettier than her, or I'm more doing better than her at work or into other social entrepreneur, or to like another supermodel, or to another mother. I don't compare myself. I compare myself within myself. So I look back last year, and which also kind of making it funny thing, because I'm so busy to travel and do things. I never had time to have a boyfriend or to settle down until I met my husband now. And he kept talking about getting married and things. I said, I'm too busy for that. And there's a kind of like he's in his 40s, I'm in my towards my 30s, but I have a 50 years old thinking of way. We kind of fit very well, but to sit down and have a baby and have a family, I don't have space for it. But when I look back last year and all of the travels and the thing that I do, and this COVID happened, and not being able to travel, even though everything kind of converted into online, and I looked at myself. So I look at my last year, and I'm going to look at my year this year, and I feel that it's going to be not a waste, but it's going to be a very stagnant year. And thinking that from the early, like March and April, I couldn't take it. I couldn't comprehend it. So I need to find this COVID period, that stagnant period, into something productive and something that is profound. And it's a big life-changing risk that I'm taking again. Then I finally say to what he wants, and we're getting married, and then wanting to have a baby, and then all of these things. So I'm actually very, very busy. It's a nerve-wracking busy of trying to arrange marriage and wedding in the COVID, and trying to do it in India, cancelling it, rearranging the venue like 5 times. He never married. I've never married. It's our first time. It was a very, very... So this year, when I look back, it's actually going to be a very busy year for me. And doing a lot of other things at work, and then, online platform and things, but not actually be able to travel much. So this is how I think, and this is how I see. And even in the whole 1 week, I don't ever put a date for me to break. So Saturday would be to clean the house, everything, and then do it my Rochun. And Sunday is for my faith and my spirit, spend a good time of that, and then the rest continue. And if I were to have a day that without any purpose or without anything, I can't comprehend. So I'm that kind of person. So in a way, it's people would see that I'm very hard to myself. Which is true, but that is actually my inner strength, I think, and to be able to turn even the COVID into a thing that is like my life-changing event, period. Yeah,
it sounds like you have life-changing events every year. It's great.
I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 5 to 10 years now, if it goes on this rate.
What you said makes me think of a sentence I heard, which I always try to keep in mind. One super amazing guy who said the brightest people don't compete with other people, they compete with themselves. I love this sentence, I think it's what you just said. So you are like the perfect example. Cool, we are approaching the end, and I need to go walk with my mom also, so I will ask you the one last question. Because we spoke a lot about the past, so now where you said 5 years, let's see even further. How do you want people to know you for, and how do you want people to remember you for?
I want people to remember me as a social entrepreneur, as my kind of professional, or to know me as such, and to love life, to love bringing happiness and opportunities for others. And I think when right now it's almost become my image of the thing that I do to my charity, Rochun, so which all go back to what my dad have said, the legacy, what we leave behind. We would just be a shooting star. Some people see it and they wish something for it, and happens to them. And if we look our life of what we are given, if you're very lucky, you can be at 100, being consistent, being okay. But if you look back, there were a billion of years, and ahead of us might be many, many years. Will we come to this life even a slight less of a shooting star? Would that be somebody through us wish something and find their wish from us? And I would love to be that shooting star for someone out there, and continue to do so in any way I can, and bring change to people's life.
Yeah, I feel you're doing a great job already to be shooting stars for people.
Long way to go.
Cool. Yeah, no, but just for the real final questions, where can people reach out to you if they want to contact you? How can people support your work if they want to support?
So we are quite open for collaboration in a bigger term, and also for students. Even though I'm quite kind of confine myself with youth from Mizoram, I also is available from student elsewhere or youth as well who just wanted to kind of collaborate or catch up or just even to throw something at me. So we have a website called www.rochun.org, our info at Rochun or alinery@rochun.org. We have a Facebook page at Rochun Paid Forward. And so people can just text me on my number, which is +44 07802 714 819. So I think I use social media and those things mainly for those purposes. A little bit of my personal, but I like to keep my private life quite private, but sometimes you kind of have to put some out there.
Cool. You're the first one who ever shared her phone number.
I know my phone number is and that is why I have so many things, but it's important. And I think people are now kind enough not to do something crazy because people really, because that's, again, I'd rather spend 30 minutes on the call with you and have a meaningful conversation as opposed to doing so many kind of, because that could be a life-changing experience for someone who really needed it at that time. And I want to be there for that person, regardless of who they are.
Yes, I'm sure you will be shooting star for many of our listeners. No, thank you so much, Alinery. There were so many questions I still wanted to ask you, but maybe for another time. And it was much more than 30 minutes, 1 hour and 45 minutes. That really went quickly. Really, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. I mean, I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun, and I think it was really a humbling conversation. So hope to keep in touch. Hope to see you in another panel. Thank you so much, Alinery.
Thank you for having me, and wish you all the best for your next podcast and other wonderful individual that you will be encountering that is worth sharing and that people get something out of it.
Congrats for listening until the end of this episode. You can send Alinery a message if you got inspired by her story, or if there is any way you can support Rochun Paid Forward. Of course, to best support Lifeline, you can share this episode to 2 of your friends and subscribe to the next episodes on any platform. See you next time!